Hey weirdos, welcome back to the Weird Canadian. Today we have a special guest. He has a master's degree from the Toronto Metropolitan University in algorithmic media, and his current work focuses on the rise of governance and ethics of artificial intelligence, data protection, and privacy. He's always learning, sharing, and helping others do the same. So, without further ado, welcome, Jesse.
You can call me whatever you want, just don't call me late for dinner. I'm old and I've been around.
Would you like to start off soft or go right into the deep stuff?
Always deep,
Okay.
hard, fast. Life is short. Let's have fun.
How do you think artificial intelligence is changing the way we vote and make political decisions in Canada? Should we be worried or should we be excited?
I think both. I'm excited. Politics itself is kind of craptacular and kind of worthy of worry and a source of depression and paranoia, I think, for many people. And I would argue that that is only a correlation with AI, not a causation. If we operate on the assumption that a democracy is healthiest with an informed citizenry, there are lots of people who are effectively using AI to inform themselves. I love to point out that we've, as a society, been reliant upon AI for a couple of decades in the form of the search engine. Social media over the last decade plus has also been a big role, let alone the memes that come from AI images. And now that large language models are certainly being employed by campaigns, certainly being employed by propagandists. I feel we are still in the experimental phase of artificial intelligence's role, but I do think we need more conversation, more discussion, more awareness of the role that AI has been playing. But I suppose there are also many people who are effectively using AI to misinform themselves or even misinform others. The extent to which deception and delusion have been mainstays of politics has always been a problem, always been debatable. I think the primary impact of artificial intelligence is to amplify, so it can make the deception even greater. It can make the delusion even greater, but it can also make the opposite true. It can make the information more accessible. It can make the information more diverse in terms of having more diverse viewpoints and having more diverse debates. So while I think, to your question, AI plays a tremendous role in our current political environment, I'm not currently in favor of any rules or regulation. I don't see it necessarily as good or bad. It's the humans who I see as being good or bad, and that tends to gain my attention and focus.
Yeah, I see it as a tool, just like a gun. It's up to the user to really drive what the intention is. And I think that's something we miss a lot, especially with social media right now. So, what are some simple ways we can ensure AI is used responsibly in politics?
I don't think one should require any political, legal, technical, cultural expertise to get into politics. You know, to your point about AI being a tool, the power is in the person or the people who wield it. But unfortunately, we still do have a lot of barriers to entry. We still do have a lot of disincentives, a lot of obstacles. I wish politics as a field was as accessible as AI currently is. And so I think, to answer your question, we need more responsible people in politics. I think for many people, we are now in a moment where electoral reform, system reform, if not complete and total system overthrow, is becoming palatable and desirable, precisely because we feel our system isn't working, because we don't have anyone responsible who is participating in this process, let alone using these tools responsibly. And I think that AI could play a valuable role in not only making politics more accessible, but rewarding people in politics who were responsible, both with how they use the tools, but also with how they speak and how they campaign and how they seek to govern. I think there is a growing sense amongst users, for lack of a better word, that we can all do whatever anyone else does. Like, we see a good prompt, we can copy that prompt. We see a good idea, we can copy that idea. We are seeing a kind of not academic, but definitely peer review model that I think has potential. If we could use the tools to advance a similar kind of peer review system, we could have freedom and autonomy where anyone could experiment. but the responsible, the credible, the useful to us all examples will rise to the top.
We're actually seeing a lot of that right now in the content creation space because all of the algorithms have shifted more to quality over quantity now.
And that's a good point, because the algorithm is changing, right? We're going more from social or attention graphs to interest graphs. So it focuses more on what we're interested in. And that's where I do think we are seeing a shift in the rewards, that we are going to be rewarding people who give us what we want.
Let's go on to cybersecurity. You were a hacker in the 90s. How do we keep our data safe? Or is it easier nowadays to hack?
A little bit of both. I mean, a hacker in the 90s was nothing. There was not much to hack, right? It just meant that you were curious. So it's a brag in the history sense, but it's not a brag in the technologically proficient sense. But ironically, yes, we have come back full circle. Like in the 90s, there was these things called script kiddies, which were just hackers who knew how to run a script. And now we've got the equivalent with LLMs, because they're, of course, a number of AI models that are conducive to cybercrime, that are conducive to computer security, and make it really easy for an avid student to learn fast and to be very effective in exploiting the state of insecurity that currently exists. Because that's the flip side. That's the kind of open secret handshake that all the quote unquote hackers know. We live in a state of insecurity because our governments wish it. They are the ones that deliberately create and incentivize insecure systems so that they can take people's data, so that they can surveil and monitor, right? Our governments are the real hackers. And hackers, for the most part, are just piggybacking on that policy environment. They're just taking advantage of the fact that there are open doors digitally everywhere you look. So on some levels, it's always been easy. On other levels, it has been a bit of cat and mouse as intelligence agencies, law enforcement agencies criminalize people who are not on their side, who do not keep secret the state of insecurity as we know it. But it's all politics. It all comes down to whether people are motivated to look past the looking glass, to realize that their technology world is inherently insecure and that they can have fun or engage in shenanigans really quite easily. But to your ultimate question, how do we keep our data secure? I would say you can't. Individuals fundamentally cannot protect themselves. You can mitigate risk. You can use proper tools. You can learn how encryption works. You can take measures to use strong passwords and do all your updates and all that stuff. But it's more that we have been left to the wolves. And in being left to the wolves, we're going to get bit. We're going to get eaten every now and then. I personally have a very ephemeral attitude. If someone hacks my website tomorrow, I don't care. I'll create a new one using AI in a couple of minutes and have something back up. So I encourage, both amongst communities and corporations, a model called participatory cybersecurity. And this is the idea that if the human is the weak link in the chain, well, let's do everything we can to strengthen that human. Teach the users how to be more secure. Let's teach everybody how to hack. That is the best defense. I have often people push back when I champion the hacker identity. They say, well, yeah, but that's been tarnished. Shouldn't we find a new word? I'm like, no, we got to reclaim it, because it is about education. It is about learning. It is about the joy of learning and sharing knowledge. And I think that is a wonderful virtue in this world of abundant knowledge. It's still a pretty wild and crazy idea, weird idea, as it were, to be appropriate for our podcast here today. But I encourage people to assume that they are being monitored, to assume that they're being hacked, and to have no shame. You know, whatever your secret may be, whatever your guilty pleasure, trust that somebody else knows it. Be proud. That is, I think, an excellent life skill, living philosophy for these times we find ourselves in.
Yep. And we're coming to a point where we now have access to everything. I'm blaming the system. I'm blaming the policies. I'm blaming regulations. What they're putting out in text is what's truth, as far as I'm concerned, because of the vast amounts of misinformation. Balancing rural and digital life. What's that like?
It's a lot of hard work.
You run a farm in Eastern Ontario.
I'll point blank say it wouldn't be possible without the digital. And I say this in the sense that a lot of the hard and monotonous work is made easier by listening to podcasts, right? Because I've got access to all the world's knowledge, because I've got access to all sorts of entertainment. When I am mucking out a stall, when I am, fixing equipment, I can still have cultural, emotional, intellectual stimulation that one associates with urban living, right? You can have that anywhere.
Mhm.
And I think that is fundamentally the contradiction of the urban rural divide. And there is a huge divide. I spent my early childhood in the Northern Ontario bush. And that's partly where I got a taste for rural living. When I was maybe 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there, my family moved me to the city, right? You don't have a choice when you're at that age. And then I spent then the majority of my life stuck in the city. I wish I had left sooner. I did leave before the pandemic, thankfully, because that changed some of the property dynamics. But people, I think, falsely associate city living with cosmopolitanism, with a level of access to culture and technology and food. And the reality is now, thanks to the internet, you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have the sanity of rural living. You can have access to nature and fresh air and still have access to everything you would get in the city, thanks to the internet.
Yeah.
And that to me is what allows me to live such a fantastic life that I think is unique to Canada, quite frankly. There are many few places in the world where such a thing would be possible.
Well, yeah, like, we have so much space. And like, I was living in Ontario for 30 years, never been anywhere across Canada at all. And then me and my partner just decided to move to Newfoundland. And we were just astounded at like the level of access to nature, like just the feel good of being out here and being able to do our own things, not worrying about anything, but still having the access to the technology. Without that nature aspect, I think I would have still been stuck in that mentality of there's no getting out of this. Like, I'm stuck here. Canada's landscape makes us think that we're stuck in one place, but you can go anywhere. And this country is very beautiful.
And vast.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you could spend an entire lifetime exploring it and you still won't.
Except this island. Apparently, you can drive the entire Newfoundland island in one day.
But don't forget Labrador, because it is Newfoundland and Labrador. And you could spend your entire life exploring Labrador and you still wouldn't get to all of Labrador. Like, the Rock is difficult to make roads on. So there's limited roads in the entire island.
We're still trying to work on a bridge across at some point. We're going to get there. Okay, so let's go on to the next thing I have up here. Do you think AI will take away jobs, or will it present an opportunity for Canadians?
I don't think it'll take away jobs. I think the empiricism around AI is that it changes jobs. Not always for the best, but I think on its own, AI does not take away jobs. It transforms jobs. Unfortunately, humans take away jobs. And if humans believe that AI will replace jobs, then they will replace jobs with AI. And I think that's a mistake. And I think that reflects a misunderstanding of AI's capabilities. So I think the more people who play with AI, the more people who use AI, the more that they'll recognize that AI can be whatever you want it to be.
What would be one approach you would give to Canadians to transform how they're using this technology? Like, what key advice would you give them to use an AI model to help them in their day-to-day life?
I'd give it as a two-parter. Number one, be a child. Think back to when you were a child. Is there a painting you wanted to paint, a book you wanted to write, a comic you wanted to draw? No consequences, no judgment, no money. Use AI for that. That's number one. And then number two, like kindergarten, compare it with all the other kids in the class. The key part here is there's no judgment, just creativity, no money, no application, just play. Because it is, in many respects, a toy.
I just took a communications course, and that was the biggest thing. Play. No judgment, just play.
The judgment is secondary.
Love that message. All right, so now I want to get into more of your education side of things. Can you explain what you're trying to do?
I mean, the Academy of the Impossible is an evolving experiment that's manifested in a number of different forms. We had a physical space in Toronto for a couple of years. Now the space is the farm, where we have hosted classes online and in the mud. But it is fundamentally my and my colleagues' rejection of education. I feel let down by the schools that I went to. I feel disappointed by the current state of education. So the Academy of the Impossible is kind of trying to say, can we create a peer-to-peer learning culture and then learn things that other people said could not be learned in a time frame that they said was impossible, but we said, let's do it before lunch. That is the impossible task of education. You don't need to pay money to learn.
That is very fair. Do you know about the school in Boston, I think it is, that has the students who are entrepreneurs? So they only actually have class for 2 hours a day, and the rest of their schooling is actually teaching them entrepreneurship.
I am familiar with those models of education, but no, I don't know of the one in Boston that you speak. Many universities have embraced that entrepreneurial model. For example, the Toronto, used to be called Ryerson, is now the Toronto Metropolitan University. They've replicated that model in multiple faculties throughout the university. And I've spent a lot of time in the accelerator space, in the startup space, in the entrepreneur space. They mean well, but it's a whole lot of delusion and deception rather than actual business creation, let alone job creation, let alone wealth creation. It's all kind of nonsense to me.
Yeah, I feel like I got more learning in the past 10 years of just actually being an adult and trying to learn myself than anything school has ever given me. What inspired you to dive into the world of technology and politics?
I mean, separately, I've always been interested in politics. I guess my parents fundamentally were the source of my interest in politics. They were always very political. They always talked about politics, at the dinner table. And I suppose technology was just a backdoor to politics. Because as we discussed earlier, there still is a lot of gatekeeping. There still are a lot of barriers to entry when it comes to the political world. And technology for me, certainly coming of age in the late 80s, early 90s, there weren't a lot of people getting into technology, and yet it seemed like technology was going to have a transformative impact on politics. Technology, as you know, is something that anyone can get into. And I suppose I feel that technology is the most interesting, the most relevant part of politics. And I think the rest of the world has kind of figured that out and caught up to us. Unfortunately, maybe a little too late, given the relationship that exists between power and technology.
All right. What has been the most surprising thing you've learned about how technology impacts our daily lives?
That technology is meaningless, that it's all culture. That technology is the foreground. It's what we focus on. It's the tool we use. But how we use the tool, whether the tool exists for an extended period or not, how we understand the tool, whether the tool is successful or not, is a cultural issue. While technology and politics is where a lot of the language, a lot of the focus, a lot of the attention I have goes, culture is by far more important, more influential than technology and politics combined. And that's not something I think I anticipated. And that is something that's still surprising.
Yeah, that's definitely surprising, especially with the evolution of the internet. Like, we've kind of seen culture shift, but I never thought of the culture shifting the internet more than the internet shifting the culture. Is there anything we can learn from any other country right now?
Yeah, there's lots of things we can learn from lots of countries. There is a not country, almost country, wish it was a country, called Rojava, Rojava. And this is what should be Kurdistan in what remains of Syria. So when Syria fell apart as a result of the Islamic State, ISIS, kind of taking over part of Syria and Iraq as a consequence of the Syrian war, one of the fighting forces that was successful in pushing them back with a lot of American help were the Syrian Kurds. So not the Iraqi Kurds, not the Turkish Kurds, but the Syrian Kurds. And they've had a really interesting kind of country, kind of republic that has been thriving amidst the chaos that surrounds them. Their future, of course, is now in question because the United States has withdrawn their support and the Assad regime in Syria has fallen. So it's not clear as to what their future entails, but I encourage anyone who's fascinated in learning about democracy in particular, but especially freedom, that they look at this particular experiment. There are, of course, lots of other countries out there doing lots of interesting things politically, culturally, technologically, but that's the example that I would offer. I'm curious about the whole digital autonomous organizations, the DAOs. There haven't been any that I think are credible in any form. But the theoretical side to it does fascinate me. So to answer your broader implied question, I'm waiting for one of those to emerge, and I will have my eyes on that when and if they do. But the fact that they haven't, to me, is an indictment of the movement that surrounds it and the juvenile nature of their political aspirations.
I'm pretty sure we're all just children learning as we go, and nobody knows what they're doing anymore.
No, there are no adults. That is the great disappointment of my life.
So, do you have any final words? Anything you want to plug or anything?
No, just keep learning, right? I think as a society, as Canadians, our future depends on our ability to learn. And I think the larger question of our ability to learn will really play out in the months to come. And that's where I'm both cautiously optimistic and at the same time still a little skeptical. So it's a good time to be a weird Canadian and paying attention to the learnings of weird Canadians everywhere.
Thank you very much for coming on and sharing your information with the world. It really gives an eye open to a lot of people. And yeah, thank you very much.
And if I could ask you a question before we close, whereabouts in Newfoundland are you?
I'm in Lewisport. So do you know Twilling Gate, where all the iceberg watching is? About an hour into the bay.
Okay. So, I mean, central Newfoundland or still eastern Newfoundland?
Central, yeah. We're
okay.
We're right with Gander, between Gander and Grand Falls.
And do you listen to CBC radio there?
I don't listen to radio at all.
Okay, fair enough. Because this is where I'd give a shout out to Leanne Power. And Leanne Power is in Gander. She reports right across Newfoundland, but in particular central Newfoundland. And I suspect you and Leanne would get along. So at some point, if you run into Leanne Power, tell her that Jesse Hirsh says, hey, how you doing?
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Take care.